What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Scythe, and this is going to hopefully be the most definitive dragon farming tutorial video of Trove, because honestly speaking, it's been literally years since I ended up making a video tutorial talking about how you're going to end up actually getting dragons. We're going to be talking about how to get dragon coins more specifically as a free-to-play player as well as a pay-to-win player, because there's a couple different options for that. You can actually see that there is a dragon challenge going on right now in the top right hand corner of the screen, and I'll talk about that in a bit, because there's a handful of different ways you can end up getting dragon coins. One way is through the dragon challenges. These are going to end up showing up on the real life hour, and it's completely, I don't know if it's random or if there is a set amount of dragon challenges that show up per day. I honestly don't know. But there's also going to be a collection challenge, and then, as you may or may not have seen, there's going to be the Imperium or Rampage challenges that will show up as well. And all of these challenges kind of end up fighting for their slot on the actual hour of the day. So just if it's 10 o'clock your time right here right now, then you know that something is going on in Trove, one of the hourly challenges. So just to kind of talk about the the dragon challenge itself and then the collection challenge. So the dragon challenge, as you can see in the top right, says Cursed Vale. So this is going to be related into the Cursed Vale biome. This is multiple tiers, so as you end up going into the higher tiers of this challenge, you're going to end up gaining more dragon coins. There's a limited amount that you can end up doing, and quite literally it says complete dungeons in the Cursed Vale. You're going to get 3 times the bonus multiplier for Dragon Peaks Adventure World, so you would end up going to U5, and bonus classes and times 4 for U6 to U9. So if you end up just going to any of the primal worlds, you either go to the Dragonfire Peaks, and that's going to give you that bonus multiplier, or U6 all the way up to U9, and that's going to give you an even higher multiplier, while also using the bonus classes. So we see that Ice Sage and Tomb Raiser. So if you got these guys strong enough, you pretty much hop into U6 or U9 so that you can end up completing dungeons, and essentially you're going to end up getting a certain amount of dragon coins, as well as a daily bonus. As you can see right here, you can only get the daily bonus once a day, unfortunately. And honestly, this is like the way that you actually get dragon coins in this game is atrocious. Okay, lots of people have been wanting to have like a how to get dragon coins fast video. There's no way to do that, fam. Unfortunately, it's just kind of how Trove is, which sucks, because the reason for this is the developers have never, in my entire career and experience with Trove, they've never actually adjusted the numbers to accordingly be acceptable to how the things end up scaling. So for example, there's way more dragons now than there's ever been, and the dragons themselves still cost 300 to 400 dragon coins, instead of them lowering that number of the dragon coin cost for the sake of balancing it out, because there's just so many more dragons in the game, and you're gonna want to try and get all the dragons that you can, because dragons are going to end up giving your characters stats, and these are going to be permanent buffs to your entire account, or well, at least to your, yeah, I guess entire account. That's true. That you'll be able to take on adventures with you, even if you have like a new character just starting out. You're going to end up having the benefits of all of the dragons that you have on your character. But we'll talk about all of those in more detail as we get over to the Dragon Crucible. That's why we're hanging out in the hub. So speaking of the hub, the collection challenges can show up every now and then, and those are going to end up being a portal that'll show up right here in the hub. You're going to want to hop into the hub, go into the portal, and quite literally it's just going to be a mini game. So you're going to have to collect coins within an allotted time frame, and you can get all the way up to a platinum ranking for that. That's obviously going to give you the most dragon coins and dragon caches. And these dragon caches suck, dude. They give you a very, very small amount of dragon coins. They can give you a decent amount, but not really. And then there's also going to be, as another challenge, there is the racing challenges, and those are awful. Most of all because Trove is as laggy as you would expect, and unfortunately those challenges will have you flying through a certain amount of rings. In most cases, it'll be either a flying course or just a normal race, which those can be okay. But the problem is that Trove is as laggy as it is, so you might literally fly through a ring, and then the game itself doesn't actually register it, and then you don't end up actually getting the point, meaning that you have to backtrack which isn't so bad on some of the maps, but some of them are really, really bad and just make it altogether difficult. I don't know why that keeps going on, by the way. The invaders just keep spawning in the hub. It's really weird. But the one cool thing about the collection maps and stuff is that they're player made. So while some of them are from the devs, a lot of them are just from players that ended up building these maps in their club worlds, and then they ended up getting accepted into the game and thrown into the map rotation. Now the map rotation itself kind of changes here and there just based on the developers' whims, and because of it, some of the older maps that I've experienced might not necessarily be in the collection challenge anymore for those of you playing the game right now. But I just think it's really cool because we actually even have some of our club's maps in rotation, which I wonder whether or not those are actually in rotation on console. That'd be interesting. Did any of you console players ever see any of our Team Pixel maps that myself or Mark or any of the other guys ended up making as a collection challenge on console? Because I'd be really curious to know about that, whether there's a distinct difference in the collection challenge maps on console and PC. But anyways, let's hop on over to the Dragon Crucible. That's pretty much the way that you end up getting Dragon Coins as a free-to-play player, okay? Now, there is other options, kind of. And I say kind of because you can get these Dragon Coin boosts, which of course cost credits. Technically, you can get these as a free-to-play player. And then there is, of course, the 5 Dragon Coins for Qubits, and then there's going to be these Dragon Eggs themselves for Qubits. Now, oh, and I guess there's also the Dragon Coin Digest, which is the tome. I do want to point out that when you end up spending 10,000 Qubits on 5 Dragon Coins, you get somewhere around... I forget what the number is, but it's like when you end up loot collecting this egg, you pretty much end up getting the same amount of Dragon Coins as you would get if you spent 10,000 Qubits on the coins themselves. I think you get 2 or 3 extra coins from actually just buying the coins themselves than you would for, you know, loot collecting the egg. But my point is, for those of you characters out there that have yourselves tons and tons of Qubits, it's honestly more cost effective to go for the 5 Dragon Coins a pop, sure, but it's going to save you a lot of time to just go for all of the eggs that you can. Okay, now technically speaking, again, there's the credits that you can end up using. A free-to-play player can buy a credit pouch, but they're fairly expensive to end up getting, and there's not really that many ways of getting Flux in the game. However, I will still have an updated Flux farming tutorial for you guys sometime soon. Now, the Dragon Coin Boost, this is a fairly recent item. I don't think it's actually out on consoles yet, but as soon as the U10 update ends up going live, these are going to end up showing up. Maybe they're already on console right now. Somebody let me know in the comments below. I don't play console anymore, so I can't say, but I'm pretty sure that these are a new item that are going to be added when the U10 update hits. And for those of you that constantly keep asking, the U10 update for console players should end up arriving either later this month to early February. But either way, what these essentially do is exactly what you would think, where you use the booster item and it's going to give you double the Dragon Coins for your next 50 Dragon Coins, 100 Dragon Coins, 250. So this is so weird to me. Like, only the Trove devs would ever come up with something like this and think that it's something that has to actually be implemented, where essentially you would use this right here and you would get an extra 250 Dragon Coins. This is essentially giving you 250 Dragon Coins, but you have to grind the Dragon Coins in order to actually get these, because you're getting double the amount of Dragon Coins based on the Dragon Coins that you are earning. So rather than it just blatantly giving you these Dragon Coins, you get this booster and then you still got to grind the Dragon Coins yourself. Now, that said, you can save up all of your lesser dragon caches if you want, and then, you know, save up for one of these and then end up using it to essentially double the amount of Dragon Coins that you get. Or you can end up using it on greater dragon caches, which greater dragon caches are another thing that you can technically end up buying for credits, and honestly is pretty good, because they, you know, they're horrible for getting dragon eggs, but they're going to be great for just giving you Dragon Coins, because on common, they'll end up giving you, like, it's like 10 or 50 Dragon Coins or something ridiculous. Like, seriously, you get a lot. Now, Diamond Dragon Knight, which is this Dragonite pouch right here, We'll talk about that in a moment as well, because that's actually used for a handful of different crafting recipes, but more so for today's purposes of this video is used for the primordial dragons. These are going to end up being the elemental dragons of the game. We haven't gotten one to work with Geo Topside yet, although it was originally promised, so hopefully we'll end up seeing that dragon get added to the game sometime this year. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the U10 update though, is my point. Now, when I talk about the dragon eggs themselves, there is the dragon eggs that you can craft right here at the Dragon Crucible, right? So all of the dragons themselves are going to end up requiring their dragon egg, and I'll kind of run through and try to recall where most of these dragon eggs come from, because this is going to be the definitive dragon tutorial video. These souls, these dragon souls right here, this was the early implementation of dragons, where originally you had to collect up to 100 dragon souls, and there would be certain milestones at which you would end up getting different forms of the dragon, and then finally at the 100 dragon souls you would usually end up getting the fully maxed out dragon that would be able to glide, that would be able to shoot fireballs, whereas earlier on you would end up maybe getting a dragon that doesn't look as big and bulky and it can glide, but it wouldn't be able to shoot fireballs. Okay, so that's kind of how these all work. They're all under the same parameters, and these dragons are, you know, it's kind of a neat system, but they ultimately end up costing about the same amount of dragon coins. Unfortunately, they all cost dragon or golden souls, which is extremely expensive. This system obviously just got completely shut down, because originally they were going to have dragons coming out every month. And further to the point that I mentioned earlier in the video, where the moment they added dragons to the game, and we're talking about adding them every month, I kept thinking to myself, isn't that just going to end up getting out of hand eventually? Because it's just going to end up making the crafting components for all these dragons harder and harder for new players to attain, which sucks, because you need dragons not only for the stats that you end up getting from them for combative sake, you know, out farming dungeons and stuff like that, but more so because each of these dragons fully maxed out is going to give you magic find, and magic find is pretty much the lifeblood of the game as far as finding drops is concerned. However, thankfully, when the U10 update hits, I want to point this out and be very clear about this. You need a certain amount of magic find in order to end up getting stellar gear as a drop, and even if you have a high amount of magic find, it's still fairly rare to end up getting stellar unless you're a freak like me, but I got all the dragons. However, crystal gear is coming out with the U10 update, and I'm happy to report that you actually don't need any magic find to have crystal gear drop. This is what the devs have said. But higher magic find is of course going to end up making crystal gear more common. So essentially a starting player can end up getting strong enough to get to U8 of the Geo Topside biome, go and farm dungeons to end up getting crystal gear without having a single dragon or any magic find at all. And if you end up fully pearling up crystal gear, it's going to end up being stronger than fully maxed out stellar gear, which stellar gear is a whole other thing to end up tackling, which we'll talk about that in another video. So onto the dragon eggs themselves. Certain dragons are going to cost fragments, which are found in specific locations, and then other dragons are going to end up costing eggs, which are found in specific locations. Now, what I was mentioning about these greater cache is that they have the very rare chance of dropping a golden egg. Now, the golden eggs are going to be tradable, so you can actually trade them on the player market, whereas the other ones that free-to-play players get, you can't trade them at all. And they are going to just instantly unlock the dragon itself, so you don't gotta worry about any of the crafting components regarded here, or the dragon coins or anything like that. You're just going to end up getting the golden egg and using that. There you go. So each of the dragons, as you hover over them, you can see this one right here. It shows the stats. You're gonna get 1,000 more max health, 1% of your crit hit, and 50 magic find. So again, all of them are gonna give you more and more magic find and more other stats. Again, I'll talk about each of the different eggs respectively, because I want to talk about the primordial dragons now. The primordial dragons, these things are weirdly different and were really awesome when they first got implemented, and are still you know, an item worth boasting about when you end up getting lucky enough to get them. However, the RNG in Trove absolutely sucks. So a diamond dragon egg is an item that you can very rarely get from empowered gem boxes. Now, for experienced players such as myself, I barely ever get diamond dragon eggs, even though I've opened literally thousands of empowered gem boxes. I technically haven't gotten 3 diamond dragon eggs out of all of my empowered gem boxes, and thus, technically speaking, I wouldn't be able to have all 3 of these primordial dragons. But thankfully, the devs ended up adding diamond dragonite to the game, which, for all intents and purposes, is a store item that you get out of a lot of packs and stuff like that. technically speaking, the dragon pouch that you see right here, and the dragon pouch ends up dropping 10 dragonite each, by the way. The dragon pouch technically is an item that can drop in like U9 as far as I know. I've never had it drop for me, and I've never known anybody that's gotten it as a drop. So that's how rare it is. You'll still be able to see it on the marketplace here and there. You know, there's going to be certain people that'll sell them, but you can see just based on their price how difficult and rare these items are to actually get. However, again, you can get them out of a lot of different store packs. And the reason why this is relevant is because Diamond Dragonite not only is used for gem augmenting items and a bunch of other things that are fairly expensive in their crafting component, but you can also just outright craft yourself a Diamond Dragon Egg. And a Diamond Dragon Egg is required for each of these Primordial Dragons. And these Primordial Dragons are really, really cool. I wish that they would expand upon the system of these characters, you know, and add the new Primordial Dragon, because they all have different abilities that make them wholly unique from the rest of the dragons. Or at least they did. They're not really as unique as they used to be originally. So for example, the water dragon here, which not only each of these dragons is going to end up giving you stats, but the stats that they give you is also going to be augmented. Like you see right here, it grants you a 10% increase to power rank from water gems, as well as just the stats themselves that you have on your water gems. So essentially, based on the water gems that you have equipped, you're going to end up having that much more power while you actually have this dragon. I've heard from people that you have to have the dragon equipped, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's just a passive thing that you just casually have, but I honestly am not entirely sure on that one. Either way though, this one, the cool thing about this dragon is whenever it shoots a fireball, it will end up actually creating water in the block with which it ended up shooting the fireball. The air dragon, this guy is going to end up having faster gliding speed than the other dragons. However, honestly speaking, if you use the Fey Trickster's subclass ability, you can get higher movement speed while flying than using this dragon. So this guy's pretty useless now. And then there's the Fire Dragon, which is probably one of the more useful ones. I'd say the Water Dragon and Fire Dragon are probably the most useful utility-wise, because this guy basically shoots his fireballs out like a machine gun and makes it fairly useful for players to end up blasting their way into dungeons and stuff like that. The Water Dragon technically has higher block damage with his fireballs, but the problem is that then you got a big pile of water that you're trying to fight dungeon bosses in between, right? So anyways, let's move on to the different eggs. Also, before we get started with all the egg stuff, I wanted to mention before I forget that if you look at the daily rewards, on Friday is going to be Dragon Day, where you're going to get 2 times dragon coins from challenges, 2 times lesser caches from challenges, and 2 times chance of finding dragon fragments, which dragon fragments work differently than dragon eggs, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's also important to note that having patron is going to give you a 3 times bonus on all of that stuff, and it's, you know, if you're going to be grinding dragons on any day, you got to do it on Friday. Also, before he's gone, I want to mention that Luxian, the dragon that you kind of see behind me, as I'm recording this, Luxian is here. He's not going to be here probably by the time this video ends up getting uploaded. But the dragon itself that you end up getting from Luxian is a time-gated dragon that is wholly difficult to end up getting. He kind of operates the same as the old school dragons, where you're going to have to get 100 of his dragon souls. You're going to end up getting an ally of him, a couple different versions of the dragon itself, and then this is going to end up being the full maxed out dragon, which has some pretty nice video effects for the fireballs as well. Now for this egg portion of the video, which is probably going to be the last home stretch of it, I'm mostly just going to be talking about the eggs. I'll hover over the different dragons so that you know which one I'm talking about, and more so than that, you know the crafting components, but otherwise you yourselves can end up doing this yourself and seeing what all the different stats are from these dragons. And I mean, I'll just kind of leave that up to you. But anyways, Celine, or the Chinese New Year dragon, this guy is going to end up being, you're going to get his egg from the store. So you got to buy it for 10,000 cubits. I'll also do a quick little preview of each of the dragons, which means that this video is going to be an editing nightmare and probably going to end up being quite long, but I want to have a definitive tutorial that I probably will never need to update ever again, seeing as the development of Trove is kind of in a standstill. But either way, this is going to be the Chinese New Year dragon. It was the first serpent dragon added to the game, has really beautiful fireworks video effects, and there is only a couple of dragons that end up actually stealing this thing's skeleton, but it was really cool when it first ended up coming out. The next dragon, you're in, the duck's shadow or whatever, is from a dormant dust dragon egg, which is another egg that you end up getting for cubits. Haha, this was actually a dragon, as far as I remember, that was originally added with one of the extra life packs, but those are a limited time pack that is in the store. I think anyways, I don't think that you can buy the pack in the store anymore, or maybe you can. Honestly speaking, lots of the stuff doesn't show in the store for me anymore, and it's literally been years since this dragon was added to the game, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments of whether you can still buy the store pack that gets you this dragon egg. And it's pretty much Lugia from from Pokemon. Everybody was yelling at the devs when they ended up putting this into the game, because the one cool thing about most of these dragons, and why you'll notice a dip in quality for some of them and a higher quality for a lot of them, is that while the developers are responsible for most of the video effects on these dragons, a lot of these are actually player made. Eril, which is another weird lightning type of dragon, this is going to be another one that you get out of the cubits out of the cash shop. A dormant siege dragon egg is required for this guy, and he's not bad. He's kind of just like the bone dragon, but has armor on him. And most of all, like when I talk about the quality of these dragons and the video effects of them, a lot of the video effects you may or may not notice. I mean, most of all, I guess it's an end game thing to notice that a lot of the video effects are kind of reused for a lot of the different dragons. So even this lightning effect, I'm pretty sure was actually used on the bone dragon, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time since I used that guy, and it's kind of irrelevant, but I just kind of consider it like a little bit of Trove trivia for you guys. Now, the Everdark dragon is regarded as one of the most beautiful in the game. Like, seriously, it's such a cool dragon. It just looks great. It's got great shading. It's got great video effects to it, and everything about it is just absolutely awesome. It's probably one of my all-time favorite dragons in the entire game, honestly. And this guy is going to cost you a dormant Infinian dragon egg. So the way that you actually get these it's a little bit ridiculous, but when you're going through shadow towers and you end up completing your shadow towers, you're going to end up getting shadow shards, which are a required component, but you can trade those shadow shards for shadow cash, or if you're grinding shadow towers on shadow tower day, you, I think, just outright end up getting the shadow cash themselves from dungeon boss drops and stuff like that, right? And or shadow tower boss drops, and those cash have a chance, a very small chance, mind you, of actually dropping the dormant Infinian dragon egg. And this one, I think, if I'm not mistaken here, Infinian is one of the, this is one of the few tradable dragon eggs for a free-to-play player, so keep that in mind. Some of these dragon eggs are going to be tradable, others will not. This dragon, which I just call the Jet Dragon, is another really cool one just because it's got unique video effects and has kind of these jet wings behind it when it flies around. Also, the shot that comes out of its mouth is actually just a full-on rocket or missile or whatever. Still a pretty cool dragon, although absolutely disgusting to end up grinding this guy. Basically, you're going to have a rare chance of getting a Kami Dragon Fragment from, I think it's just from the Shadow Tower Titan boss chests. When you open those chests, I think that's the only place that you can get the fragment of the egg, just very rarely. And then otherwise you get it from Neon City enemies. I honestly don't know whether or not the devs ended up coding it so that the Luminopolis enemies drop the Kami Dragon Egg Fragment, because I think that those enemies are more related to some of the other dragons that we're going to be talking about a little bit further on. I could be wrong about that though, because honestly it's been a long time since I saw the Kami Dragon Egg Fragment, because I honestly don't farm the neon biome or anything like that specifically, and you're gonna have to go out of your way to actually end up farming for any of these dragon fragments. The thing that's ridiculous is that a lot of these dragons, when they originally ended up costing fragments, they had their prices in half. So a lot of them would actually cost like maybe 10 fragments or 30 fragments or even 50 fragments. And then the devs, in their great wisdom, ended up making the drop rate of dragon fragments increased, which is what everybody wanted because the drop rates of dragon fragments sucks. And then they ended up increasing the amount of dragon fragments needed, which is pretty stupid because a lot of these dragons, though possible to attain, do actually require 5 to 15 hours each of just non-stop grinding that one solid dragon. And some of them even more so than that, just because the resource with which you need to actually grind the fragments out of is that much more difficult to end up getting. But we'll talk about that when we get there. So the Pinata Dragon, fairly self-explanatory, is dropped from Pinatas. So you're going to end up getting a Pinata Dragon Egg just out of the Pinatas that you end up getting out of the store. I don't know whether or not you can end up getting... Where do they even sell these Pinatas anymore? I think it's in the more section. I don't know if you can end up getting a Dragon Egg from the Crystal Pinatas, which of course you can end up getting as a free-to-play player in the game, or from... the new ones that are going to be added with the U10 update. Console players, you guys don't know this, but basically by completing your daily qubit bar, you're going to end up getting some free pinatas. I haven't had any eggs drop from that. There's quite a few free-to-play ways of actually getting the Dragon Egg, though. And as far as I know, the egg is actually tradable unless it says otherwise on the item itself. Like you can see, we hover over this, cannot be traded, whereas this one is in fact tradable. So it's a fairly easy dragon to get. Blackbeard, the pirate dragon, is probably one of the cooler methods of getting dragons. It was really awesome when they started doing this. It's too bad that they kind of abandoned it. But there's going to be a couple select dragons that are going to actually have their eggs or fragments earned by finding world bosses. So I have other tutorials that talk about each of these world boss dragons more specifically. I'll try my best to remember to put a link in the description, but otherwise you can just quite literally look up Blackbeard or the Pirate Dragon video tutorial on my channel, and that's going to explain this in a much better way than I could now, because it's, again, been years since I ended up actually farming for this dragon. But Blackbeard, as far as I remember, is going to be a dragon that is going to spawn exclusively in the Drowned Worlds, if I'm not mistaken. And you can actually end up finding his lair as well, which is very rarely spawned in a very specific part of the ocean generation. So again, you'll just have to kind of refer to that video. Sorry, we're not going to go into too much detail about these world dragon bosses, but one of the most common ones that you guys have probably seen is the Candy Dragon, which we're almost talking about him in a sec. The Lego Dragon is very, very beautiful. I absolutely love the video effects of the shots on this guy, like seriously. And he's just fairly cool and kind of cute and adorable. You know, we've had a lot of Lego themed things added to the games from some really cool people. Most of all, Be Yellow, I'm pretty sure, is the one who ended up starting all the Lego stuff, and then other people ended up kind of taking the same style for a lot of their other modded items. But this is one of the weird dragons because, as far as I remember, maybe I'm mistaken about that, I think that this guy was added before dragon fragments were in, and so because of it, he actually costs dragon eggs, 5 of them for some stupid reason. Where you get these eggs is just from normal adventure chests. So as you're out fighting enemies in the world, they have a rare chance of dropping an adventure chest. These adventure chests have a rare chance of dropping mounts related to those chests specifically, but can also end up dropping the dormant block dragon egg. And it's not that difficult to get this dragon. Most of all, it's just because you need 5 of them for some dumb reason, and then otherwise the rest of the crafting components are super duper cheap. Candy Dragon, as far as I recall, was one of the first world boss dragons that was added to the game, and was really, really cool when they started doing stuff like that. It's too bad they abandoned that whole idea in favor of the dumb dragon fragments, because I really think it was awesome to go out into the world and people were all farming the dragons together, and it was a really community-driven experience, you know. But this one basically is going to be a dragon that can end up spawning in the Candoria biome. And if you see, you know, those giant gumdrops that sometimes spawn in the Candoria, you can find a orange one very rarely, and if you blast your way into that, there will be a portal that will take you to the lair of this dragon. And the only difference between the lair and the ones that spawn out in the world is the lair is going to be basically a guaranteed area where you can end up fighting this dragon, and it's a really, really cool dungeon. This, again, being another world boss, means that I do have other tutorials talking about it more specifically in the description. The deep sea dragon, this guy's beautiful. He's absolutely gigantic as far as the other dragons are concerned, like seriously, and he's kind of got this whole acid thing going for him. And it was really cool when this guy was added to the game. It's another world boss dragon that you're going to end up finding out in the deep sea biomes, which, oh man, if I'm not mistaken, there's the pirate dragon, I think, spawns in treasure isles, and maybe this guy is the one that ends up spawning in the drowned world. I think that's the case, or maybe both of them spawn in the drowned world. It's been so long, guys, so you'll have to forgive me. But either way, I have another tutorial talking about this dragon more specifically in the link in the description, so check that out. And otherwise, it's a very cool dragon again. Very difficult to grind this one, just because if you're not doing it with friends, it can end up taking quite a long time to end up finding this guy. But the cool thing about him is that he was actually the first enemy in the game that added acid to the component of like a different material, or a different liquid, I guess I should say. And why this is relevant, just as a little Trove trivia, is because this guy was actually added before the Hydra dragon, or before the Hydra boss was added to the game, as far as I recall, and was the first enemy in the game that ended up actually using the acid, which, you know, we kind of took as a hint that the Hydra boss in Shadow Towers would end up eventually using, and it did. The Halloween dragon is difficult because I'm pretty sure you can only get this guy during Halloween. I could be wrong about that, but he's a cool dragon. He's also gonna have a store pack that'll show up during Halloween, and he's got these fantastic video effects. This was one of the other ones that ended up taking the Chinese New Year dragon skeleton, and more importantly was just really cool video effects. It's not that anybody necessarily wanted the dragon itself, just because, I mean, it is a cool dragon, don't get me wrong, but the Draco egg, it says that it doesn't say that it's untradeable, so yeah, I'm pretty sure you can just buy the egg just from players, which does make it a little bit easier, because it says that you can coast the dragon, you can craft the dragon egg at the shadowy station, and as far as I remember, the egg itself costs resources that you can only get during the Halloween event. So that's going to be the Shadow's Eve event that shows up every year. So I mean, if you can buy the egg yourself, okay, sure, because you can just end up crafting the pumpkins through the gardening profession. And thankfully, they're changing it with the U10 update, just because I don't think this is affecting console players yet. Or no, it actually does. It affects console players. This is long before the U10 update, so never mind. Where you can actually have these resources from gardening grow all year round, because pumpkins originally could only grow during, like, the fall. And that ended up making something like this dragon and some of the other mounts in the game altogether difficult. This Enora dragon, as far as I remember, oh man, I'm really stretching my memory for all of these things, guys, like seriously, but you know the Trove of Wonder ships? That's going to be the golden ships that you can find out in the drowned worlds, right? Like, they even kind of show like a little picture of one right here. I don't know why I was pointing at this one, but that's going to be what a Trove of Wonder ship is going to look like. You'll find them out in the drowned world, right? And essentially, you're going to have to spend tons and tons of flux to end up getting Trove of Wonder boxes, so that you can open those and end up getting yourself what do they even call them? The Fragments of Wonder, I think, which you can end up actually, yeah, you can buy these from players. They've actually gotten a little bit cheaper than I recall. And then you can end up getting the egg. Oh gosh, do you get the egg from the Trove of Wonder merchant? I think that's where you end up crafting it. Otherwise, stop me if I'm wrong, guys, and let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to pin your guys' comments that end up correcting me on some of this stuff. But again, it's been so long. I honestly don't remember, dude. Oh, man. This guy, the celebratory dragon, is going to end up being a dragon that you can end up getting when the celebratory pinata event is actually triggered. So there's going to be a merchant that'll show up. This is a yearly event. He'll show up right here. And you can trade with him pinata coins, which pinata coins you end up getting from pinata invaders, which is just going to end up replacing normal invaders with pinata invaders. And then you can end up trading those coins with him in order to end up getting the dragon egg. As far as I remember as well, the dragon, or not the dragon, but the pinata enemies can also end up dropping celebratory pinatas. And when you throw those on the ground, those also have a chance of getting the egg as well, if I'm not mistaken. The Tannenbomber Dragon, more recently, we already ended up seeing this with the Holiday Christmas event, and obviously it's just going to end up being a Christmas-themed dragon, which, I mean, it's quite literally a Christmas tree turned into a dragon. Even its wings folding out is pretty much just a giant Christmas tree. And it's a pretty cool dragon. I actually really like it. In order to get the fragment, or in order to get the egg, oh geez, where do you end up getting the egg? Let me think about this for a minute. Right, so during the event, or during the last event that we had, there was a big Christmas tree right here, and there's a unique crafting table that only shows up during that time of year. So again, this is another time-gated dragon that you can only get once a year, so get them while it's hot, right? But at that crafting table, you'll be able to craft the dormant dragon egg. I know that I talked about it in my recent video that talked about the winter's event, so you can check that out if you want, but otherwise I'm pretty sure, no, actually I don't know if I have a video specifically talking about this dragon or not, but either way, that's how you get it. The Lorekeeper Dragon was one of the few cool dragons that was being added through the new daily login tokens. So these have since been removed from the game, but originally you would end up logging into Trove once a day, and for that month you would end up getting a unique token that you would end up using at a crafting table, and it was just a very convoluted, weird event. They tried to sell those coins in the cash shop, but most of all, people were buying those coins rather than to get the content of the mounts and stuff like that out of it. They were actually doing it because the boxes that you could craft with those tokens would end up giving you Bound Brilliance, which was a resource that is used for augmenting your gems and stuff like that. But either way, that's why you're going to end up seeing the Dragon Egg right here. And they've since changed it so that this guy is actually from Luxion whenever he decides to actually sell the fragments. Or he'll end up just outright selling the egg. I'm not sure which one he's going to sell next, but either way, that's how you end up getting the dormant Lorekeeper Dragon Egg from this point and forward. So the Corgi Dragon, which again is another really, really weird dragon, but also wholly unique. This is the only one that's actually like this because he's just a Corgi, but a dragon, which is absolutely ridiculous. I love it. Wish they would do more fun gimmicky stuff like this, because seriously, I mean, you can already get Pemblock in the game, and this is just Dragon Pemblock. Now, this dragon, as far as I know, is still within one of the store packs. It doesn't show up for me, so it could have been removed. I don't know. But you can actually just craft its dragon egg right here. You can see it's fairly expensive as far as crafting components, just because that 5,000 steed feet, 60,000 shapestone and stuff like that. But then you end up using that to end up crafting the dragon. The Corgi Talisman, I do want to point out, is a rare drop that you get just out in the world from normal enemies, and it's going to be difficult to tell whether you got one of these because they're the talismans themselves are going to show up in your crafting inventory right here rather than your normal inventory. So keep that in mind. You might have the talisman secretly, but just to put it into perspective, I played this game for like, I mean, literally like years, and I don't seem to have any Corgi Talismans for some reason. They made them so rare. Thankfully, the Corgi Talismans are tradable, though. This is another weird lightning type of dragon that kind of ends up using the video effects that I mentioned earlier of the same lightning bolt. It's slightly different just because it's purple. The dragon itself is very strange. Kind of call it a crow dragon just because that's kind of what it looks like. I know that it's supposed to be blades though. And originally when this dragon was added to the game, it had 3 legs. Turns out that that was a mistake though, and they ended up rectifying it, which sucks because I actually kind of like the idea that it had that uniqueness about it, right? But this is going to be another one of those dragons where you can just outright craft it. Plasmic Solution, which is a resource that so many people struggled with when this dragon got added, is actually a resource that you get from gardening, which thankfully it actually just blatantly says it's created through gardening now. But either way, that's how you get the dragon egg itself, and then here's the crafting components for the dragon. Bismuth Dragon, or Ore Dragon as we all like to call it. This one's actually kind of one of the more... Well, I won't say it's an easier dragon to get because it's actually kind of difficult because you actually get this guy's dragon fragments from Infinium ore only. I'm pretty sure it's not gotten from any of the other ore in the game, if I'm not mistaken. You don't get it from Shapestone or, you know, Formosite, which, I mean, if you do, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Again, it's been a long time since I ended up farming this thing, and honestly, I don't farm the ores anymore, so that's why I have no fragments, but that's why it costs Infinium ore, as far as I recall, is because it's only gotten from the Infinium ore itself. And this one kind of sucks to get just because Infinium is one of the more difficult resources to farm very specifically. because, I mean, you can kind of go to the Fey biome to end up going for it, but generally speaking, this one's going to be pretty tough to get. And next is going to be one of the hardest dragons in the game. Not the hardest, one of, though. So this is the spider dragon. I've seen some of you guys in the comments that say this is your favorite dragon as far as style is concerned. I really don't understand why. To me, this thing is absolutely disgusting, but hey, everybody's got their own taste, right? It does have really cool video effects, though. Like, I like the fact that we get these spider webs kind of coming underneath it. Reminds me of Donkey Kong Country 2. There was a mount in that game that was just a spider, and he would kind of do something like this. And either way, you know, it's pretty cool. Now, the reason why this is one of the more difficult dragons in the game to get is because the spinner Dragon Egg Fragments are exclusively gotten from spider-type enemies. So good luck trying to farm that specifically. One of the biggest problems with Trove and trying to farm a lot of these dragons is that any of the dragons that require you to farm a specific enemy type all suck to get. They all take an extremely long amount of time to get, because you got to think, even compared to the Basemouth dragon, when you find a patch of infinium ore, you know, on a good find of it, you can end up getting, let's say, like maybe 50 infinium or something like that, right? Now, pair that with the same drop rates of trying to find 50 different spider enemies, because that's one of the biggest problems with any of the fragment dragons, just in general, is the devs, near as I can tell, haven't adjusted the drop rate percentage of each of these dragon fragments based on the difficulty at which to actually obtain each of the different fragments. So this guy being specifically spider enemies means you have to farm so many more spider enemies. Like, it's so much more time consuming. Let's just say, for example, it takes maybe 10,000 infinium ore to get 100 of the fragments. That means that it's going to take you 10,000 spiders roughly to end up getting the fragments themselves. And while other people will argue otherwise, I've tried it out myself, and I've talked to quite a few people that have actually crafted some of these bad boys, rather than people that just, you know, do their base calculations off of just, oh, I got really lucky and got the dragon right away. No, the average player is not going to get these fragments right away. It's very difficult. I just want to get this out of the way for any of the dragons that cost fragments that are gotten from enemies. It's not just that I'm trying to attack this one specifically. While on the opposite spectrum, we've got this guy right here, which is the plant dragon, and this guy is earned from sunlight bulbs. Now, just to put it into perspective, what I was just talking about the enemies, sunlight bulbs, as you know, are an extremely easy resource to get in droves. And because of it, this is actually a very easy dragon to end up getting, especially if you're doing it on like Dragon Day, because the sunlight bulbs are going to spawn in peaceful hill biomes as just a giant sunlight sunflower dungeon. And you go in there, you run over all of the sunflowers with your mount, and quite literally you get tens of thousands of these very quickly, and can end up getting the full dragon right away. Well, maybe not tens of thousands really quickly, but you know what I mean. You can grind this dragon in maybe like 2 hours, if not 5 or even less, honestly. Rich fertilizer, of course, is gotten from gardening, so that one's a little bit more pricey as far as the resource is concerned. The Dino Dragon here, which I remember when I ended up actually doing a video covering this when it was a mod and it wasn't originally added to the game, I think that this dragon would be right at home as being one of the primordial dragons. But unfortunately, the way that you actually get this guy is, you guessed it, exclusively from dinosaur enemies. So that's not as bad as the spinner dragon, but that's still pretty bad. I know for a fact that Joe ended up taking like an average of, what was it, like 12 or 15 hours or something like that? Like, that's the thing. Most of these dragons are going to end up taking 10 hours plus to end up grinding, depending on if it's a more difficult resource to actually go for. The Cthulhu dragon, which surprisingly is cooler than I thought it would be when it first got added to the game. I mean, I still like the look of it. I don't like the fact that it's got one giant eyeball in the front of it, but I love the black hole video effects of the shot. Like, it seriously is a really cool dragon, and was originally something very coveted just because it was so difficult to actually get this guy. And honestly, it still is, because it costs Void Watcher Dragon Egg Fragments, and these bad boys, you need 50 of them, and they're extremely rare to get out of Shadow Cache. Now, the thing that's kind of frustrating about this dragon is that originally when it was added to the game, I'm pretty sure it didn't actually have a golden dragon egg, but now it does. I ended up getting it before it had a gold dragon egg, and it ended up costing me a whole lot. Like, seriously, it was like 30 mil fluxer. Well, not 30 mil. It was like, no, it was 30,000 shadow cash. That's right. It was something ridiculous like that in order to end up getting 50 of these fragments. Like, these fragments are actually insane with their drop rates. But there's a golden dragon egg now, so you can just buy that from other players, thankfully. The ice dragon, which is one of the most beautiful in the game, seriously, you can argue otherwise, but I mean, just look at this thing. It's got great video effects, it's got great style, everything about it looks awesome. It's like the Ice Titan from the Hercules Disney cartoon, and also is one of the only other dragons that has video effects on its wings. That was one of the unique things about the Air Primordial Dragon, which we'll talk about those ones last, because they kind of were supposed to be the most coveted dragons in the game, and again have kind of taken a bit more of a back seat as they've added cooler and cooler dragons. Now, getting these fragments, quite obviously, you get it from grinding glacial shards, which is a ore that you can see in the ice biome. So there's a couple mods on PC that make this ore easier to see. Otherwise, console players, you're kind of out of luck. They are very difficult to actually see in the biome. I would actually recommend going into any ice caves that you see generate, because you'll end up finding a lot of glacial shards there. And oh man, this dragon I grinded legit, and he's pretty difficult to get. Like, he takes a long time. It's not that bad if you just get into the zone. You can end up grinding these guys in, you know, less than a week, that's for sure, but it's still fairly difficult. Time-gated dragon time. Look at this guy. He's disgusting. He's a really cool dragon just on the outside. Like, as you end up first looking at him, you're like, whoa, this guy looks beautiful. And then you realize that it was made by the devs, so it's all one color, and it's just pitch white with polka dots all over it. Like, this thing actually looks like it's a test model or something, you know? It's not like it's complete. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But this guy, Moon Silver Dragon Egg Fragments, which are quite literally, you're going to spend Despoiled Divinity, which is a weekly resource you get from completing Daughter of the Moon. So based on the different difficulties of Daughter of the Moon that you end up completing in Shadow Towers, you're going to end up getting more Despoiled Divinity. You can just complete your Ultra Towers once a week, get all the Despoiled Divinity from the boss, and then you end up spending the Despoiled Divinity at the Shadowy Merchant in order to end up getting these Dragon Egg Fragments. And if I'm not mistaken, this dragon takes literally like 3 months worth of Shadow Towers or something. Maybe it was like way more than that. I don't know. You can only get, I think, like 3 of these fragments a week or something ridiculous. Like, this dragon actually sucks to get, especially because you want to get most of the costumes out of the divinity section just because they're going to give you a lot more mastery, whereas this guy is obviously going to give you extra stats. So pick your poison. Whew! Don't worry, folks, we're in the home stretch here. So the water bubble dragon, or I guess just bubble dragon for all intents and purposes, this guy is kind of adorable just because his tail is actually like a bubble blower and he has bubbles coming out behind him, and if you shoot, he's gonna end up doing a big old bubble shot. This, of course, ends up going with the bubble gunslinger costume. It was made by the same person, as far as I recall, and it's a difficult dragon to get just because it's kind of locked behind fishing, and fishing is... whew, fishing's boring. Now, the thing that's funny about this dragon is, on average, you're going to end up getting the Bubble Dragon fragments a lot more often than you will the Jumping Jade Fin. The fact is that the Jumping Jade Fin required in order to end up crafting this dragon is more difficult to get than the dragon fragments themselves. And top that with the fact that the Jumping Jade Fin, although it is a fish, so it technically is tradable as far as I recall, you're not going to be able to see it on the player market. You'll have to actually just trade it with players yourself, right? Or Jumping Jade, yeah, Jade Fin, which, yeah, they're not actually in the player market. You can still trade them with players, but I mean, getting this many of them is also ridiculous, because if you have them that they're at a higher weight as far as the game's concerned, then they're not going to end up stacking correctly, and it's a little bit gross. Blocktron! One of the coolest dragons in the game, absolutely beautiful. I mean, look at this guy. Reminds me of like Electro Man from Mega Man X or something like that. Like, it's a really, really cool dragon. and also one of the most difficult to get, again, because it's going to end up costing you adventurine in order to end up getting the Blocktron Dragon Egg Fragments. So I'm going to hop into the Club World for this one just so I can show you guys what this is about, because Club Worlds are going to be able to have an adventurine quest merchants and stuff like that, right? So depending on your Club World, you might actually not be able to even buy this guy unless you actually have a merchant. So you gotta have these dudes over here, which are going to end up giving you various quests, which is going to end up giving you adventurine. And I mean, honestly, it's one of the biggest complaints about Trove for most common players, because the way that these are set up is in such a way where you basically got to go into a world, complete a couple dungeons, come back to the Club World in order to end up starting another quest again, and it's just repeatable over and over and over again. Now, you can only get a limited amount of adventurine per day because you can only end up completing a limited amount of these quests per day, and honestly, it kind of sucks because there used to be exploits that you could end up using for maybe it was like kill 300 enemies, and what people would end up doing is finding a kill 30 enemies dungeon, and we would end up being far enough that the dungeon would keep spawning enemies over and over without actually completing, and people would set up these really elaborate like farming stations so that you could end up just kind of standing there and shooting in a straight line, and it took like hours and days. It was literally like such a long time to end up grinding the amount of adventurine even to get this dragon, let alone the fact that they ended up removing that system, because it's 12,000 a piece. That's insane, dude, and you need 5 of them. Not to mention the other Tempest Dragon, which we'll talk about him in a bit, because he's another one that's for adventurine, which is even more time grinding adventurine, which wouldn't be as big of a problem, except for the fact that adventurine sucks to grind. Like, it's really, you gotta grind it specifically by being out on the sidelines and actually doing specific things rather than just organically getting adventurine while farming because it's something that you just passively get. Like, honestly, just remove the adventurine quest merchants and give us a tome, for crying out loud. Oh no. Now it's time for the Starfire Dragon. Dun dun dun! Worst dragon in the game to get, because the devs just keep screwing it up. I have a video specifically talking about this dragon alone because of how broken and bad it is to actually get this guy. Beautiful dragon, but honestly, even if you're a free-to-play player, grind your flux up and just try to get the golden dragon egg from the player market if you can, man, because this guy, he's absolute trash. So the way that you end up getting his fragments is extremely rarely from specific Shadow Tower elite enemies. Not just normal Shadow Tower enemies, mind you. Elites. These are the big fat guys, the mini bosses that you end up fighting, if you will. And the thing that's stupid about this guy is the devs made a big mistake. They ended up not including the Starfire Dragon fragments off of any of the enemies that they copy and pasted from the Everdark into the Shadow Tower. And although the U10 update in its patch notes ended up advertising that they ended up fixing this, I can confirm with 100% certainty that they did not. The Everdark enemies still don't drop any loot, and they still don't drop any Starfire Dragon fragments. There is only a handful of people in the game that I think have legit actually grinded this dragon. Like, even when I'm grinding Shadow Towers, when I was going for my Ultra Shadow Tower badge, and I was just non-stop grinding Shadow Towers over and over and over again, 300 times Ultra Dreadnought. 300 times. And I didn't even have enough dragon fragments to end up crafting this guy. And that's Ultra Shadow Towers. As far as I know, it doesn't make a difference for normal or Ultra or anything like that. So, again, it's another thing where you're going out of your way rather than just casually grinding it while you end up playing the game. Because you're probably just going to go to normal Shadow Towers to end up getting this guy more so than ever. And, again, the big problem is that they increased the drop rates of the dragon fragments in general, but they ended up upping this guy's cost to 100. He should not cost 100 dragon fragments, dude. They either lower the amount of dragon fragments because the devs just can't seem for the life of them to get the numbers right with this dragon, or make it so that it just drops from all Shadow Tower enemies. That would fix it. Because as far as the devs are concerned, they sit there and they just look at the numbers. They don't take player feedback. They don't look at the actual characters that have actually crafted this dragon. They just look at the numbers and go, yeah, there's a considerable amount of Dragonfire or Starfire dragon fragments dropping, but they're not taking into consideration that that's between multiple players, not one player specifically that's farming this dragon outright. Like, this dragon absolutely sucks to get. On the opposite spectrum, right up next is probably the easiest dragon to get. You can literally grind this dragon in like 30 minutes if you're doing it on Dragon Day. Actually, in fact, I think you can grind this thing in like 15 minutes if you're doing it on Dragon Day or something. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of a nice, quick, easy dragon that you can go for, so long as you have the dragon coins, of course. And the Veiled Dragon Egg Fragments are gotten from the, what is the resource? Crystallized Cloud. Yeah, that's it right there, dummy. So Crystallized Cloud is a resource that's, or an ore, I should say, that you can get out of Radiant Runes World or just normal Cursed Skyland. Of course, you have to have the right generation. You can't do it in the Cursed Skyland. But the Radiant Runes World is probably your best bet. It's super duper easy to get so long as you have all the bombs and stuff, because the ore itself is fairly difficult to end up mining, but you're gonna get this dragon no problem. Then here's the other adventurine dragon, as we call it, and oh man, does it have some beautiful video effects. It doesn't really do justice because we got like the white underneath us, which is kind of covering the jet wings, but it's pretty much Jet Dragon 2.0 and is really, really cool. Absolutely love it. But again, it's the same as Blocktron, so it takes a bazillion hours to end up grinding the amount of fragments that you need, because you need 60,000 adventurine. Yet another unique dragon skeleton frame, so it's going to be the only dragon that actually has this, you know, skeleton structure and flies like a bee, even ends up shooting really cool honey video effects and stuff. It's a really good dragon, and as of right now, as far as I recall, you can still buy it, yeah, out of the Hardy Party Pack 1, so this is going to be a limited time pack that is eventually going to go away, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because it's an extra life pack, which, incidentally, that pack was supposed to have been removed sometime in December for the Hardy Party Pack 2, but it seems like that, you know, kind of took a bit of a back seat as Trine Worlds ended up getting dissolved and they're not in charge of Trove anymore. But this dragon is another one of those ones that is absolute trash, because you get the dragon fragments specifically from bee dragons. Now, the funny thing is, I made a video specifically talking about this dragon and how difficult it was to get, and although everybody was yelling at me in the comments about how easy it is to get this dragon, I found that when I ended up actually putting up a poll and taking feedback from the average player, not only in my Discord, but even on my YouTube community page and stuff like that. And on average, no, people were not getting these fragments very often. Most of the people that tell you that this dragon is easy to get will get like 25 fragments really easily just because they get lucky. And then they didn't actually grind the entire dragon. Like, this dragon does suck to get. You can talk to Joe about a lot of this stuff. That's where I get a lot of my info in regards to these, because he's had to grind all of this stuff legit. Now, that said, he still doesn't have all the dragons, and I still take my feedback greatly from a lot of you guys in the community, and thankfully have a lot of you guys watching that I can get all the feedback so that I can end up redistributing it to the masses of the people that don't understand how any of this stuff works. But either way, we're in the home stretch now, the last bar or two, I guess, of the dragons. The Light Pegasus Dragon, this is probably one of my favorite, right next to the Everdark Dragon. I absolutely love this guy because it reminds me of Dinobot from Beast Wars when he was in his weird exoskeleton suit. Not to mention, it's just like, shouldn't this have been the Divinity Dragon that you get from Despoiled Divinity? But no, instead it's actually gotten from Light Vaults. So you're going to end up getting these Light Spear Dragon Eggs from Light Vaults, which I'll end up hopping into my club world so I can end up showing you guys this. It's difficult. It's difficult. This is definitely an end game dragon if you don't end up just grinding for the golden dragon egg itself, because in order to end up crafting this guy, you need quite a few resources indeed. You go to the Chaos Core crafting table, and the Light Chaos Bolts themselves, you're going to be able to craft 10 of them for all these resources right here. So you need Stellar Souls, Radiant Souls, Diamond Dragonite, which again we've already talked about is difficult to get, and more Despoiled Divinity, which is a time-gated resource. Not to mention Chaos Cores, which you get exclusively from Chaos Chests. And I mean, geez Louise, like even me sitting right here, I can only craft 5 of these, which would be 50 of them. Most of all, just because the diamond dragonite, like that's the thing. It's so expensive to craft these, and then you can end up getting the fragments out of them. Now, that said, if you end up getting, say, like a light Pegasus wings or even the light Pegasus mount, you can loot collect those to end up getting some of the fragments for the actual dragon egg itself. Also, I want to point out to console players at home watching, because I'm going to probably do the rest of the video here in Team Pixel, the Dragon Crucible is an item that PC players, originally it was an alpha crafting table. So players that played Trove way back in the alpha days were able to actually have that crafting table that they kept in their inventory convert over to a Dragon Crucible, and then we were able to buy it on the market and actually place it into our club worlds. Console players, however, will not be able to do this because those crafting tables were never in the game, because even though Trove launched in beta on console, Trove had already been like out since 2015 or something ridiculous. Like Trove has actually been out for a lot longer than most of you guys think. But either way, that's how you end up getting the fragments for this guy. Fairly expensive. And then the next one is going to be the Dark Pegasus Dragon, which is fairly ugly. I don't really like it. It's kind of the same as that Crow Dragon that we mentioned earlier from the Extra Life pack. And he's got neat video effects, or neat enough, I should say. But the head itself is kind of weird because it's like a weird dinosaur, and it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of strange. I do kind of like the idea that the wings combine into a shield, whereas the other dragon was kind of the weapon. This one's kind of the defensive one. And of course, Dark Chaos Bolts. So even more time-gated Despoiled Divinity, Diamond Dragonite, Pentasouls, and Chaos Cores. So these are technically cheaper than the Light Vaults, that's for sure. And follow the same principles. So you're going to end up, if you get the Dark Pegasus Wings or the Dark Pegasus Mount, that's how you end up getting the fragments in order to end up crafting the egg. And then on top of it, you gotta craft the dragon itself. And I guess I should point out too that the dragons each cost even more Despoiled Divinity, which is that time-gated resource. But no, it doesn't stop there, folks, because we've got this guy right here, which, I mean, thankfully a lot of these dragons you can end up getting with another method that I didn't mention earlier in the video. I'll mention it at the end, but cash shop, you know, dragon effigy. But this guy right here, if I'm not mistaken, came out with U10, so I don't think he's out there for console players just yet. But he's going to be a two-headed dragon, which two-headed dragons are very useful because you can just you know, spam both of their heads back and forth. And again, this kind of takes away from the fire primordial dragon. This is absolutely astonishingly beautiful. Like, I love this dragon. He's beautiful, isn't he? Now, the way that you get him is by using both the light and dark egg combining into this one dragon. How lazy can you get? Like, seriously, that's insane. And then again, there's going to be this other guy right here, which console players, you won't have this guy right away. When the U10 update hits, you'll actually get fragments for this dragon, which is related to U10 because it's a geode topside dragon. That's why it's kind of dark and poison themed and stuff, and it's really weird. I don't know, dude. Like, I really don't like this dragon. If you do like it, let me know in the comments, because I'm always interested to see if anyone actually likes these, just because personal taste is a thing. But the way you get the fragments for this guy is there's gonna be the new resources, the new ores more specifically, that you end up getting out of the U10 Geo topside area. Those ores will have a rare chance of dropping the fragments for this dragon. And generally speaking, you should end up having enough nitro and viridian. These are the two new ores. You should end up having enough to craft the dragon by the time you end up getting 100 of the actual dragon fragments. And the ore itself is also tradable, so keep that in mind. Now we're going to talk about the Imperium dragons. Haha! So you can literally buy these dragons out of the cash shop. Well, these dragons, I'm talking about one of them right now. This dragon's 50 bucks. Yup. I forget whether or not they said they removed that stupid pack, but they really should, because, I mean, even though this dragon's kind of cool, just because it's unique, you know, there's no other dragon in the game that has this skeleton. They ended up using this model for a lot of the enemies in U10, however, or just Geode Topside, I should say. I always refer to it as U10, though. But this guy absolutely sucks. The way that you get his fragments is the Imperium Dragon Egg Fragments are gotten from... if I'm not sure, you get them from the Neon Scrap Cases or the Lesser Neon Cache. This one says Dormant Imperium Dragon Eggs or Resistor Bent one. So yeah, I guess it's just from the Lesser Neon Caches. So in order to get these I'm pretty sure you get them very rarely just from neon enemies. No, I think you get these ones. These ones are the ones just from rampages exclusively. And then these neon scrap cases, I think you just get from neon enemies in general. If I'm not mistaken on those, stop me if I'm wrong. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there's one of them that you get exclusively from rampages. And the other big thing that I want to point out is all of these resources that you end up getting out of this, the sentient shards, those you end up getting from rampage bosses very rarely, or just from crafting beacons that you can throw down in your club worlds to spawn a rampage boss in order to end up getting the fragments. Like, man alive, it's difficult to say the least to end up getting these dragons. And technically, I guess I would say that 50 bucks is worth it, but it is still a ripoff because it's extremely expensive compared to the rest of the stuff in the game. Now, where you end up crafting all this stuff is at a resistors crafting bench. So even though I should probably have another video that talks about this more specifically, just because people still ask about the resistors crafting bench, let me see if I can end up finding one for you guys. So remember earlier when I mentioned the Luminopolis compared to the Neon City enemies, and I wasn't sure if they ended up dropping the Cami fragments, which I'm still not entirely sure, but there's going to be two different types of generation for the Neon City itself. This is going to be Neon City, where you see these weird batteries coming out of the ground. And then this is going to be Luminopolis. They look the exact same on the map, and technically this is a sub-biome, which essentially means that it's just a different generation of the same type of biome. So think of this as the Neon City 2.0. Now, there's going to end up being these outposts that will spawn in the Neon or Luminopolis exclusively. You will be able to see them on the map. I can't be bothered to go and find them right now, but through that crafting table that you can, or through the outpost, I mean, you can end up finding a resistors crafting table, and you use that resistors crafting table to construct the various resources that this dragon ends up costing to craft. Then there's the other dragon. I just always called this one the Imperium dragon for some reason, but it's pretty much going to be the exact same thing. It's another dragon that wholly is different just because its skeleton is unique. And it's kind of cool, but also not to point out that both of these dragons, this is another dragon you can have a $50 pack, by the way. Both of these dragons also operate as mag rails, so you can actually go onto a mag rail track and use these dragons for some weird reason. That's kind of like the only gimmick that they have over the other ones. But again, you're going to end up getting the fragments out of those neon caches, and then all the resources are going to be different. But you know, the sentient shards, just to put it into perspective, these, like, I've grinded I don't know how many rampages and just neon enemies and stuff like that, and these sentient shards that you're seeing right here, I just barely have enough to craft each of these dragons. And I mean, I can't say that I have all of the fragments or how rare these fragments are actually to get, because in all honesty, I've never opened any of my neon caches. I just kind of saved them for some reason, just because why not? Now, the other blue Chinese New Year dragon is another one of those ones that's fairly easy to get, honestly. You can get this guy a lot quicker than you would think, which, I mean, it took me like, I think it was like 12 or 15 hours to get. He's just a reskin of the Chinese New Year dragon. He's just blue. That's it. But the way that you end up getting this guy isn't as bad as some of the other dragons that end up costing, you know, the fragments from enemies. So you're gonna end up getting these blue dragon scales from Forbidden Spires enemies exclusively, which that's not as bad, just because there's a lot of enemies in the Forbidden Spires. You can end up fighting quite a few of them. And originally, when this dragon was added to the game, these scales did not, they were not actually affected by Dragon Day. They are affected by Dragon Day now. And then on top of it, the scales would kind of conflict with the fire, what is it, the phoenix wings. So you might be wondering, and I'll talk about it just very briefly, you might be wondering what the phoenix feathers are. Those are not actually for a dragon, although they kind of are. Not really. You're not going to get any stats out of this guy, but the fiery feathers are going to be an item that can drop at the same time as the sagely blue dragon scales. The fiery feathers, however, will not actually be affected by Dragon Shard Day, because obviously this technically isn't a dragon. However, it is probably one of the most beautiful free-to-play mounts in the game, just because, I mean, look at this thing. It's absolutely beautiful. This mount alone was definitely worth farming out of the Forbidden Spires, and now it's kind of like you know, you guys that are starting the game now benefit the most from this, because when this guy was added to the game, it was the only thing you would get from farming the enemies. Whereas now, if you're a new starting player, you're quite literally going to end up getting the same amount of dragon scales as the fiery feathers, unless you end up doing this on Shard Day. Now let's move on to the primordial dragons. So this is going to be the water primordial dragon. Again, I already kind of explained how you're going to get these guys. You just gotta very rarely get a diamond dragon egg out of your empowered gem boxes, which technically those are time gated. Unless you're a cash shop player, then there are other methods of actually just buying your way past it and getting yourself empowered gem boxes, although it's very expensive and honestly not really worth it. So honestly, I would say that if you're a cash shop player, go for the credit pouches, so that you can end up selling those for flux, and then you can just end up buying the diamond dragonite pouches or something like that. They're kind of like a 1-to-1 ratio depending on the price, but either way, you can see this guy ends up putting a big old pool of water, and it's really cool. I mean, generally these dragons are just going to be tough to get. If you're a starting player though, you'll usually have beginner's luck in getting the empowered dragon eggs right away. I don't know why I don't ever get them. But then they're going to cost water gem dust, which is not really that difficult, honestly. Most of all, it's the dragon coins and the 100,000 flux. That's going to be something that's difficult for most starting players to get. I only know this because lots of starting players end up getting diamond dragon eggs, and then they can't actually craft any of the dragons because of the fact that they cost 100,000 flux, and there's not that many ways of getting flux. Now, this one is going to end up being the air dragon, which you can see why originally, when this was the only dragon that had video effects on its wings, it was just astonishing to stare at. Like, look at this thing. It was just like, wow, I love it. And it also ends up giving you kind of a nice wind gust to signify that it's flying faster, and ends up boosting all of the people around you that are close enough to you, and gives them the wing boost as well. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that this dragon actually works with the Fey subclass ability that gives you more wing movement speed, which is disappointing, because I think that if it scaled with the wing movement speed, it could end up being pretty good. And then there's going to end up being the fire primordial dragon. And this guy, I never really liked that hole in his wings. I feel like that's a little bit of a mistake, but either way, there are lots of people that like this dragon. When you're flying, you don't notice it, and then you just hold down your left click, and well, you got some great fire video effects coming out of this guy that we can't really see that well in the video, but it doesn't really matter because it's just going to end up shooting like a machine gun. So you can kind of use this guy very easily to blast your way into dungeons. And then also, I guess there is a couple other dragons that I didn't talk about, namely Fortress and Alburn, because they're not actually in here because you don't actually craft them. So I will talk about those ones briefly as well. I hope I'm not missing any other dragons that you don't end up crafting, but either way, this is going to be Fortress. He's probably one of the more useful dragons in the game just because of the way that he operates. Not only does he actually bomb straight down rather than shooting his fireballs forward, but he actually has some of the highest block damage in the game for his fireballs themselves. So you can just do this, blast your way down into a dungeon, and honestly, it's a cheaper way than using bombs. If you can't afford to either craft a million bombs or just buy them yourselves, then you can end up using Fortress. The way you get this guy is, remember that Trove of Wonder ship that I mentioned? So through the Trove of Wonder ship, there's going to be the Trove of Wonder boxes, which again end up giving you the fragments to craft that other dragon we talked about earlier. But there is also a very rare chance of getting Fortress itself out of those Trove of Wonder boxes. You can buy Fortress from other players as well, which I would honestly recommend that you do, despite the fact that you're sitting here going, whoa, that's expensive. No, it's not, considering the RNG to actually get this guy is atrocious, because while it's 1.4 mil right now on PC anyways, in order, that would end up being like, what, 140 Trove of Wonder boxes, which honestly is not very good odds to end up getting yourself Fortress. I've unboxed so many Trove of Wonder, and I haven't even gotten like any, like I've very rarely gotten Fortress out of it or anything like that. Then there's Alburn, which originally ended up making the entire game muted, because so long as you had this guy in the area, all other players would end up hearing this cool song from him, because he's kind of the song dragon, right? He's literally the exact same as Fortress. He's gonna be very difficult to get, but doesn't have as much utility. He's more of a cool dragon, just that you want to get for the sake of mastery, and because he's got some pretty nice video effects as well. Let me also, I don't know why that keeps happening. Let me also just scroll through these just so I can kind of tell you about all these other dragons. So there's going to be the Elder Dragon, which originally this guy was a dragon that you had to earn from referrals. So you would end up basically giving people a referral link. They would have to end up clicking through that and starting an account with the game. It was kind of easy to exploit just for players to end up doing it multiple times with their friends or something like that. Content creators like myself, it was, you know, fairly easy to get, obviously, but generally speaking was difficult for the average player to end up getting, and so they ended up changing it, and now I'm pretty sure you just outright get this dragon for free, which kind of sucks. Out of the cash shop, so long as you've spent money on the game, you will end up seeing it as a dragon that you can end up getting for absolutely free, which also ended up sucking for console players, because when the console ended up launching and came out as beta, this was actually a beta dragon, and it was supposed to be exclusive for that regard, and then it wasn't, which, I mean, honestly, I'm fine with the fact that they ended up making this dragon accessible to most people. I don't like how lazy it is that they didn't even bother giving us a new dragon for spending money in the cash shop, though. Then for some weird reason, there's this gold dragon right here, and its various forms are going to be earned from mastery, whereas this Valkarsta is another dragon even further down in the mastery pool. This guy, let me actually scroll through this list here and see what it actually costs to end up getting this guy, because I don't fully remember, but I know that he's like, I think he was for Mastery 300 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so for having Mastery 300 you'll end up getting this guy, and he's not bad. He's just a golden dragon, basically a reskin of one of the early boy dragons. He's not really anything special. I guess I should also go through the other dragons too, the ones that you end up getting for dragon souls. I'm not going to go through each of the different forms of the dragons. If you want to end up seeing the items that you end up getting out of it, you can just end up checking right here for one Azulian dragon soul consumed. You're going to end up getting the dragonling ally, so on and so forth. You can see it for all the other guys, but I will end up showing you what these dragons actually look like. And then, oh, purifying flames, let's just not even talk about that. Also, the Azulian dragon soul was for the Azulian dragon essence, because originally this system was you would end up getting an essence. Oh gosh, I don't even remember. You would end up getting like a dragon soul, I think was gotten very rarely out of lesser dragon cash, or maybe they were just normal dragon cash. I don't even think they had greater dragon cash back in the day, because the game hadn't gone fully pay to win yet, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So anyways, the Azulian dragon is essentially just going to end up being the exact same as that gold one that we just saw. This isn't the fully maxed out one. I don't know why it didn't actually show it, or I didn't equip it, but there is one that actually shoots fireballs. There we go. This is going to end up being the maxed out of the Azulian, which, man, when this was first added to the game, like, this is such a retro dragon. It was just very generic too, and really, really cool at the time. And then for some reason, they're like, oh yeah, let's just add a bazillion modded dragons now. So then there was the neon dragon, and most of all, the big thing about each of these dragons was, as far as I remember, they were related to the challenges. So for that month, you would have to farm neon biomes for the dragon challenge. Then there's the Redfire Bearded Dragon, or kind of the combat dragon, and he was really cool too when he first came out. Very weird. You know, we start seeing immediately the devs getting their weird own personal taste on things, where I honestly would rather have this as like a cool normal fire dragon, never mind the weird like beard. Then the Moonwing Dragon, or Butterfly Dragon, as far as I remember, this was one of the first modded dragons that got added to the game, so already the devs weren't designing the dragons themselves, and instead were just taking mods. That's why originally what people would have to do to get their dragons accepted into the game was they would have to have all of the different forms of the dragons, so that you could end up consuming the souls slowly over time, instead of the system that we have now, where it's just an outright full complete dragon. And then here's that bone dragon that I was talking about before, where he has, in fact, that electricity video effects that other dragon had. However, he doesn't seem to have the big chain lightning, or maybe it's not as big. Yeah, it does seem to be in there. It's just not as overly scaled. And you've also seen that a lot of these dragons originally ended up having auras that would end up going on your weapons and stuff like that too, which was really cool. And then this was the ice dragon, which originally in Trove, this is a little bit more Trove trivia for you guys. This dragon sucks, by the way. Like, man, look at him. His video effects are great, but he absolutely sucks. Originally, the devs were, or said that they were picky about things clipping into the ground. They would often have modders change mounts and stuff like that so that they wouldn't have them clip into the ground. And then here the devs go, just making this dragon all one color, by the way, and its wings just blatantly clip into the ground, despite the complaints that they ended up getting from players. So, RIP! Then last but not least is the Starlight Dragon, which, man alive, I remember when back in the day, like, this thing was actually cool, which I don't like it anymore. I actually really don't like this dragon because it's just kind of a butterfly dragon again. But it's just kind of goes to show like how much Trove has evolved as a whole, just with the dragon system in general. Like, this was kind of the good old days where these things were very difficult to get. You'd get them within like maybe 2 weeks. If not 3 weeks. Like, it was kind of difficult for casual players to end up getting these dragons because they were a limited time item that you could only end up getting during that month that it was actually available. And originally, again, we all thought it was really cool that they had kind of this more coveted system, not to mention these dragons actually being you know, giving you stats and being something that you would actually work towards, before they ended up adding all of the cash shot pay to win stuff, because once upon a time this game didn't have much of that stuff. Either way, this was an extremely long video. Didn't expect it to be this long, but I wanted to have this as a definitive video talking about not only how you get all of the dragons and dragon coins and stuff like that, but also showing off each of the dragons. So I hope I covered everything that you wanted to know. Again, if there's anything else that I ended up missing, please be sure to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Obviously, it was a lot of content to go through, and further than that, I've been playing this game for way too long, so a lot of this stuff I just don't even remember. I had to refer to my older video just to figure out how I actually got fragments for the bubble dragon of all things, because I forgot that you get it from fishing. Now, in either case, folks, that's gonna do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you have a great 2018. Hopefully they don't end up changing the dragons from here on into the future enough that I have to make another video, and this can just be the one that lasts. Either way, I would appreciate personally if you would like, sub, hit that notification bell. If you want to go the extra mile of supporting me, you can always buy some of the merch, which is in the description, or hit the join button on the YouTube channel to sponsor the YouTube channel for a monthly fee. Or if you don't have any money and you still want to help me out, check the link down below to Gawkbox, which is a way you can donate to me for absolutely free. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. Sayonara, and stay epic.